When the great ocean liner RMS Titanic sank in the freezing waters of the North Atlantic in April 1912, the tragedy shocked the entire world. More than 1,500 people lost their lives in the disaster, while over 700 survivors were rescued from lifeboats drifting in the dark ocean. These survivors were taken aboard the rescue ship, RMS Carpathia, which rushed through the icy waters after receiving distress signals from the Titanic. For the survivors, the nightmare was not yet over, because their journey towards safety is only the beginning of another emotional chapter. As the Carpathia sailed toward New York City, news of the disaster spread rapidly across the world. Newspapers printed urgent headlines, and telegraph messages carried updates from the rescue ship. Families of passengers waited anxiously for any information about their loved ones. In hotels, offices, and homes across America and Europe, people gathered around newspapers, hoping to see familiar names listed among the survivors. The uncertainty was painful. Early reports about the Titanic disaster were often confusing and sometimes incorrect. Some newspapers initially claimed that the ship was still afloat, while others reported that everyone had been saved. As the true scale of the disaster slowly became clear, fear and sorrow spread among families waiting for news. In New York, the harbor quickly became the center of attention. Thousands of people gathered near the docks, hoping to witness the arrival of the rescue ship. Many of them were relatives of passengers who had traveled aboard the Titanic. Others were journalists, photographers, and curious citizens drawn by the magnitude of the tragedy. Meanwhile, aboard the Carpathia, the rescued passengers were trying to recover from the shock of what they had experienced. Many survivors had spent hours in lifeboats in the freezing ocean, surrounded by darkness and uncertainty. Some had watched loved ones disappear into the water as the Titanic sank beneath the waves. Crew members and passengers of the Carpathia did everything they could to comfort the survivors. Warm blankets, food, and medical care were provided. Cabins were rearranged so that the rescued passengers could rest after their terrifying ordeal. Despite these efforts, the emotional weight of the disaster remained heavy. During the voyage to New York, survivors began sharing their stories with each other. Some described the moment when the Titanic struck the iceberg. Others spoke about the chaos on deck as lifeboats were lowered into the sea. Many survivors carried deep grief because family members or friends had not escaped the sinking ship. When the Carpathia finally approached New York Harbor on April 18, 1912, the scene was unforgettable. Rain fell steadily as thousands of people waited along the docks. The arrival of the rescue ship had been widely announced, and the entire city seemed to pause in anticipation. As the ship slowly entered the harbor, survivors appeared on the deck wrapped in blankets and heavy coats. Some looked exhausted and weak, while others stood quietly gazing at the city skyline. For many of them, the sight of land meant the end of a terrifying journey. Soon, the moment of reunion began. Families in the crowd searched desperately for familiar faces among the survivors. When loved ones finally recognized each other, powerful emotions erupted. Some people ran forward with tears streaming down their faces, embracing relatives they had feared were lost forever. These reunions were moments of overwhelming relief and joy. Husbands embraced wives, children ran into the arms of parents, and friends held each other tightly. For those who had survived the disaster, the chance to see loved ones again felt like a miracle. However, not every family experienced such happiness. Many people waiting at the docks soon realized that their relatives were not among the survivors. As lists of rescued passengers were posted, countless individuals discovered that loved ones had been lost in the sinking. The docks of New York became a place of mixed emotions. Joyful reunions happened beside heartbreaking realizations. Some families celebrated survival, while others mourned the absence of those who would never return. After leaving the ship, survivors were taken to nearby hotels, hospitals, and private homes, where they could rest and recover. Wealthy passengers often stayed in luxury hotels, while charitable organizations helped others who had lost all of their belongings during the disaster. Despite the relief of reaching safety, many survivors struggled emotionally in the days and weeks that followed. The memories of the Titanic's final hours remain vivid and painful. Survivors often recalled the sounds of the ship breaking apart, the cries of people in the water, and the terrifying silence that followed. Over time, many survivors shared their stories with investigators, journalists, and historians. Their testimonies helped the world understand what had happened during the final hours of the Titanic. These accounts also preserved the human side of the disaster, reminding future generations that behind every historical event are real lives and real emotions. The emotional reunions that took place after the Titanic disaster remain some of the most powerful moments in the story of the tragedy. They represent both the resilience of the human spirit and the deep bonds that connect families and communities. More than a century later, the story of those reunions continues to resonate with people around the world. The tears of relief, the embraces of loved ones, and the quiet moments of remembrance all form an important part of the Titanic's legacy. The disaster itself may have occurred in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean, but the emotional impact reached far beyond the sea. It touched cities, families, and nations around the world. And when the survivors finally stepped onto land and reunited with those they loved, the world witnessed moments of humanity that would never be forgotten.